Okay. So this is Blessed Baby, specifically BB and Honey is I think where I'm posting these now. Where I share all of the things that make me blessed, and this segment being specifically the reads, the books that I grabbed from my library grab and go. That blessed me as well. And so this time around in my library grab and go, I grabbed some children's books. I think, yeah, that's what why am I getting confused about that? Yes, I grabbed some children's books. I think in the last video I talked about at least 4 of them. I think I grabbed 9. I talked about 4 of them, and I'm going to talk about the rest of them right here, right now, because exciting. I wanted to say before I got into that though, children's books, as I don't know what I'm going to go get next time, which is going to be right after I complete these. Once I complete this specific video, I'm thinking about getting some graphic novels next time. Not graphic novels, teen novels. I'm thinking about getting some teen novels. That should be pretty exciting. That should be really exciting. But like I said, this time around I grabbed some children's books, and I may grab some more children's books actually too. What I'm learning as I read seriously as a 25 and up grown person, right? Reading these books, I'm recognizing how, like, I'm trying to think about, like, okay, if I'm reading this to a young learner, right? A very young primal learner, like still learning the fundamentals, right? Like, what can I grasp from this book, or what is it that this book is teaching or trying to highlight? Or even if it's just like, fun and plaything kind of situation. Even if it's just that, it's a lot of noise outside, so that was distracting me. But even if it's just like, fun, or there's no lesson or moral behind the story, like what still can be taught or learned, or what is being learned through these kind of these media that dedicate their medium to children's learning or fundamental learning. So with all of these, I wrote some notes down because they were really good. I felt like these, with this children's book haul, I learned a lot. Like, I actually took away some pretty good lessons, and I was like, from children's books, and I was like, of course, I knew this, but they seemed to be right on time with what I needed, and I think that was just like very phenomenal and very wonderful. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about these. So first off, we have Max and the Won't Go to Bed Show. Max and the Won't Go to Bed Show. This is by Mark Sperring and Sarah Warburton. I'm going to post these. I'm going to post the titles and the authors in the caption, so that you may know exactly what these are called, because just hearing them may not work for you. So Max and the Won't Go to Bed Show. This book was about Max and him not wanting to go to bed. Apparently, he was just very much so deterring the inevitable of having to go to bed. He was getting caught up in all of these other things. He was having a show. Apparently, he was having this entire play. He had to go play with the dog first. He had to go run around in the house with his blanket on. He had to get him a late night snack. He had to, be read 10 books first. He had he had a lot of energy, and it was bedtime, and he just didn't want to go to bed. And so with the illustration of this book, I really liked how bold and dramatic it was. Another thing that's been really cool and interesting about reading children's books is thinking about the fundamentals of storytelling. And so, like, when you have books, especially like picture books, where we're getting a story, and the illustrations are extenuating or emphasizing or helping to tell the story. And how do they do that, right? You can do that in a couple of different ways. Right, like I said, this is a pretty dramatic book and dramatic illustration. And because it's like this idea around a show, like Max and the Won't Go to Bed show, it has like the themes of theater within it, or themes of like drama and all of that. And like, you know, they like change the font and just thinking about all of these things. It's really cool. Let me see. Let me go to the page that's very, very dramatic. See? And I think about how cool that is. And that the illustration of this book really, really like just kind of the overall illustration, the overall theme of the illustration really highlighted how dramatic, right? Like, look, it's very in your face. I don't know if this is really good, but yeah, it's very in your face, very, very dramatic, very colorful, very vibrant, as if we are in a show. You got like the stars and see, it's very like wow, right? This is Max and the Won't Go to Bed show. And so yeah, I think that the illustration of this book was pretty key on with what the book, with what the story was, what the story was. And the just like the illustration. I don't know what to like how to name illustration styles just yet, but I think that this kind of like illustration is like funny to look at. It's very silly to me. It's very silly because it looks, I wouldn't say it looks really childish. It kind of does, but it's also like funny and funky and yeah. But yeah, as like Max and the Won't Go to Bed show, I really did like this book. I don't necessarily know if I would keep it on my shelf, but I do think it's a really cool book that could introduce the fundamental learning of like creating a nighttime routine. However that may happen for your little ones, for yourself, right? Wherever you are in life, like a really keen nighttime routine. It doesn't have to be so boring either, and that's what this book brought forth to me, because I've been working on creating and like managing a consistent nighttime routine for myself, because I don't necessarily have a bedtime, but I do like to like have things going in place so that like, you know, my body knows that it's time to relax, it's time to go to bed. And that really helps me in stressful situations too. But yeah, so, and especially like for folks who may like struggle with insomnia, or, you know, folks who like really struggle with like the rigid schedule of like having to go to bed at a certain time, getting up at a certain time, you know, creating and managing a nighttime routine may be something like, you know what I'm saying, to consider. And I think like this, once again, this book really can like highlighted the fact that doesn't have to be like, okay, I gotta go brush my teeth and I have to go do all this boring stuff, which is what I do, but I try, and with the help of this book I'm trying to make that a lot more, I don't know, not necessarily fun, but fulfilling for me to do, and helps me to be consistent while also getting me to go to sleep in a more consistent way. And so like little ways like that, I think is, and I kind of learned this when I used to do ABA work, but when I'm brushing my teeth, right, and it's like, okay, I really need to, because I got hardware all in my mouth, I got braces, I really have to make sure that I'm like getting into my brace, the hard wire and all of this stuff. So brushing my teeth takes me so long, and it's like I have to do it at least twice a day, and I really try to do it after every single time I eat, because once again, things get stuck in there, gets real nasty. It's a lot of surface area in the mouth. I won't get into that because that's not what this book is about, but that is something that Max had to do within the story, and I think about that all the time with like our with ourselves, and like, you know, making sure that we have even just the fundamental hygienic routines within our schedules, and how, like, you know what I'm saying, sometimes with how life be lifing, with people having to work and like we may not actually get to those things, but yeah, with all of the heart wire in the mouth and stuff like that, like, it takes me longer. So I've been trying to, and what I've learned in ABA is to, as I focus on one part of the mouth, right? Or like, I'm like thinking about, okay, like I'm doing the upper back jaw first, and like I'm spending time there. And so like I sing a song, or I hum a tune, or I'm like, okay, I have to brush through the course of this chorus as I sing this chorus part to this song, or if these 3 lines to the song or whatever. And I can, you know, AirPods are convenient, so it's like, you know, I can even play music for real. I can take that time to do some other things or whatever to help me calm me down, but to also, once again, allow for this routine to be a consistent, accurate thing that I'm doing that helps me to get within the overall routine of going to bed, but also, you know, for that reason as well. Right? Because that helps me to sleep a lot easier, you know, when I'm not funky, and when, you know, all of those things. I don't know why I had to go into that whole rant, but hopefully that makes some kind of sense. But yeah, this book like really made me think about nighttime. I think creating a nighttime routine, and how, and in what ways, in all of the ways, can we begin to start doing that and build upon that, so that, you know, when we sleep at night, we can sleep easily. We can sleep knowing our body is in good health, and, you know what I'm saying, invite some great dreams to come along, some good rest to come along, right? To allow all of that energy from the day to finally come to a place of rest and relief. So yeah, Max and the Won't Go to Bed show. Trying to make sure I said everything I wanted to. Okay, yeah, I did. Okay, so The Mountain Base is the next book. At the Mountain Base. I apologize. And this is by Traci Sorell and illustrated by Weshoyot Alvitre. And I don't know if I'm saying that right, and that is why I will definitely type that and put that in the caption, so can look into that. You know, I think it's a really good idea, and I should start doing this too, and this is why I'm saying this. As a reminder that YouTube is a prevalent source, and sometimes, a lot of times, you can find the authors of things like on Instagram simply. And if you kind of look, maybe sometimes more often than not, especially like with more current reads and with our more current society, and everybody can essentially sign up for Instagram, especially like if books are circulating within the US and stuff like that. And that's not to say that it always is like this, but you can look into a person's profile to be able to, or like videos that they have possibly, to be able to say their names correctly. And I do not mean to be disrespectful about that, but yes, this is the name. But yes, At the Mountain Base is a story. Sometimes I'm like, do I want to read from the thing? Because sometimes this is a lot better than what I can explain it as. So I will. At the mountain's base sits a cabin under an old hickory tree. And in that cabin lives a Cherokee family, loving, weaving, cooking, and singing. The strength in their song sustains them through trials on the ground and in the sky as they wait for their loved one, a pilot, to return home. With moving poetry and breathtaking art, this is a story that reveals the roots that ground us, the dreams that help us soar, and the people and traditions that hold us up. Yes. I felt like it was better to read that because that gave you a better and more clear picture than what I could probably relay as from what I've read. But yeah, I really thought this story was very touching and very heartwarming, and really thinking about, I think I wrote here, the foundation of home, right? The foundation of home and what our home teaches us, and the traditions and the care that our homes are meant to provide for us, and how that gives us room, and how that gives us messages and hope and hope, but like it gives us like practical ground to like walk on and to walk from, and to, you know what I'm saying, always return to when we need to, when we feel like we've been out in the world too long, or we've been out in space or in the air, literally, as within this story. But then there are things that, like, you know, when we return to our foundations, and we return to the mountain base, that can give us the nutrition and the nutrients, and like I said, the care and the things that we need in order to feel like we can really walk firmly in our lives and in new places and all of these things. This particular book does highlight the matrilineal lineage, so like the maternal lineage, just really carrying down and holding down the fort of home, holding down the fort of the cabin at the mountain base, consistently cooking the meals that bring them together, consistently moving through the traditions that allow them to stay together and to be consistently, which I think is a very consistent themes in what we know of most First Nations tribes, First Nation people, is the story of weaving, of, you know, and I think it's such a beautiful, let me go to this page, right? I love the artwork in this book because it was very upfront and in your face, and it had a lot of bold line work, and, you know, is that what they called it? Yes, the bold line work, dark bold lines, but like with the softness like in between it, and I thought that was wonderful. But it's like one of the things that I really enjoy, right? Or not one of the things that I enjoy, I apologize, but the story of weaving, right? Of weaving all of these different lines, of all of these different stories of ours, right? And putting them together, allowing them to still exist within together, and creating a pattern, and creating, you know, a way of life, right? Right? Because this is the story of weaving, and I would definitely get into this. I think there's a book. I'll see if I can remember it. I read it in college, and it talked about weaving baskets and that as a central theme to understanding the I think the queerness within First Nation people, and how they understood and how they understood and how they walked with that. And so just this is the theme that I see come up a lot within kind of First Nations narratives and readings. Yes. But yeah, like it creates this new pattern, right? And you see, like, this was just a very bold and just like very frontward story of just how the foundation and how the foundation of home really is meant to be a place that carries us and helps us to understand the patterns of our life, understand like where and how we can move and travel and navigate within this life, while also giving us the firm ground to walk on. So I really did like this book. Really did like this book. I would keep this on the shelf, and I would love to have stories with all kinds of learners around, you know, the roots, the roots that ground us and that help us soar, right? And that should be said. The roots that ground us and help us soar. Would love to. I think that's a beautiful book. I'm going to take a sip of water before I keep going because I'm feeling it all in my throat. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm talking a lot. All right. Bear with me. We got Suki's Kimono. Suki's Kimono. Suki's Kimono. I wanted to make sure I said everything for the last one. This is by Chieri, Uegaki, and Stéphane Jorisch. Once again, I'm not sure if this is Stephanie or Stéphane. Stéphane Jorisch. Seems like a little bit of a foreign name, so I'm not sure how to exactly pronounce it. As well as Chieri Uegaki. But once again, I will put that in the caption. And I will also take up the liberty to look into the authors a little bit more to see if I can get accurate pronunciations of their name. But yes, I'm also going to read. Yes, I'll also read the excerpt the intro to Suki's Kimono. Suki's favorite thing is her blue cotton kimono, a gift from her Obe-chan. It holds special memories of her grandmother's visit over the summer, and Suki is going to wear it on her first day back to school, no matter what anyone says. So, yes, actually I should read this next part. Suki's Kimono is the joyful story of a little girl whose spirit leads her to march and dance to the beat of her own drum. I really did like the story. First off, I'm going to start off with the illustration, because, like, look at that kimono for real. Like, look at how wonderful it is. Look at how Kimono is the star of this. But also, look at this illustration. This is probably one of the bolder pages, but watercolor. It looks like watercolor. I'm gonna assume that it's watercolor, and so no, that is my assumption. But the artwork is pretty soft, and you know, it's like not really in your face and bold. It's like, you know, the bold lines is with the other book, but it does still. It still does set a scene nicely. Once again, softly. I like this. Alright, once again, setting the scene. You have Suki's bright blue kimono. Trying to get up close. I really do like this filter, because it feels like I'm highlighting and sharing the story myself. But yeah, really setting the scene. Oops. Really setting the scene, but it's very soft. It's doing so with watercolor, so it's not like, once again, in your face, detailed, wrinkled lines in folks' face for real. But it does still help the story come together nicely, and I think does so the color palette choice alongside Suki's blue kimono to help her stand out really. Once again, great storytelling through the illustration. But yes, once again, the story is about Suki wanting to wear her kimono that she got from her Obe-chan, which is her grandmother who came to visit over the summer. And even with the contempt and of her sisters, of her older siblings, to be like, oh, why are you wearing that to school? Like, that's not really appropriate. We're not necessarily in a space to wear something like this, especially, you know, if we rely on our cultural reference on the first day of school, you know, and that's if you are not in a school where uniforms are required. But on the first day of school, the cultural reference of that, and you are wearing your kimono, right? Like, this is not something that we are necessarily familiar with seeing and within our societies, and I'm speaking within the West society specifically. Although we have quite a few, quite a lot quite a lot of different kinds of people that come from all over the place, and so kind of the cultural traditions that they have and that they bring alongside them, may not be censored within Western classrooms. But I think that it was very bold, and I'm thinking very, very heartfully, yes, that word, heartfully towards these books. And I think well, what would it mean if, we really were able to embrace kind of the diversity of where people come from, and right, that doesn't necessarily mean that goes without question that I wouldn't say we ourselves as U.S. folks, but we as a collective, no matter where we're from, for people coming over here, right, we should all be able to question in some way or fashion the traditions, or be open to the questioning or the answers of whatever traditions or cultures that folks may have, depending on where they are from. However, we should be open to that. I'm getting emails, so that was distracting me. But we should be open to not only should we be open to this in general, but we can really stand to understand more the meanings, the traditions. I think I'm repeating the same things, so I'm gonna move on. But yeah, Suki's kimono, I really do appreciate the boldness of that, and I once again question, what would that look like if we really could invite that more into the classroom, or invite that more into spaces, right? Where it's it may definitely stand out. And that's why I really like the illustration of this book, because it really did help Suki stand out in the midst of kind of everyone else wearing what is considered traditional Western clothing, and then you have this little child walking around in full kimono. Of course. Of course it's going to stand out. But if we were open to the fact that what values, what traditions, what cultural traditions, that's the word that I'm trying to get at, that people hold, that may be very, 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 very meaningful to them, because I don't want to get into kind of the reasons why people may travel or immigrate to different locations. However, it's just, for all of those reasons, we still carry, like I just said in the book before, we still carry those learnings and those traditions of home with us, those traditions of our home base, our foundations with us. And so, as something as meaningful as a kimono that Suki got from her obe-chan, she wanted to wear it. She wanted to keep that alive as she goes out into the world. And why shouldn't she? Why shouldn't she? Again, we can be open to Suki's reasoning and Suki's understanding of that without making sure not too much is going on, without demeaning that. And for a second, Suki was kind of getting some backlash. She was getting backlash from her sisters. She was getting backlash from her classmates. But essentially, and this kind of ties into a book that I talked about in the last video. I think it was Lily's Macaroni. She was still very much so daring and much so committed to the symbol and the value of what this kimono meant to her, that it was just no, y'all tripping. Y'all don't understand. My obe-chan got me this kimono. We had a great day. Y'all don't even understand. She got me this kimono after having a great day at this festival that reminded her of home, that reminded us both of home. Like, get out of here. And so I really did enjoy the story. This is another one that I would have on my shelf, and I would love to invite that into fundamental learning too. So as we do live in the West, and we do live with so many different other people other than the nationalities or the ethnicities at which we may have within ourselves or for ourselves, we can be open. We can be a little bit more open to what what that is. All right, next book. Let me try to hurry up and get through these. There Must Be More Than That by Shinsuke Yoshitake. There must be more than that. I'm trying to make sure I got what. So the illustration for this is very, like, it gave me Sunday comic, Sunday newspaper comic, but like in a book, in a book format. And I enjoyed it because it's like the characters aren't like, I don't know, like they don't have colored faces right there. Like they're literally white. They're literally white. And so, yeah, I don't know why that was like pretty enjoyable to me, because it felt like it kind of not erased the dimension, but it like, just like, oh, it kind of flattened the illustration in a way that worked for what the story was, and it worked for the characters' facial expressions. And so that's why it kind of gave me comic book story illustration, and why I really like this book, because once again it kind of like flattened the dimensions, and so then you get like very clear facial expressions and like a very much more clear story for what the story was getting at. And this story is about the fact that the first question is, what does the future hold? This question can be daunting or promising. It's all about perspective and waiting past the bad to consider the possibility of good. So There Must Be More Than That spins out scenarios that are at once reassuring, ridiculous, and a reminder that we all have the power to choose our mindset. Which I'll put a little asterisk mark there and say some things about that later, but whatever. After all, the promising outlook is in our heads as much as it is in our hands. It's often just a matter of choosing hope over hopelessness and seeking an affirmative alternative to challenging situations. And so all of that to say, what I think this book really, what that was trying to get at and what this book really got at is the fact that there is more than just black and white. That there is more than just, and there's a lot of circumstances in our life that can really create very black and white scenarios. So this is why I don't want to say like it's just about our mindset. Like there's actual realities that limit our opportunities. Want to be clear about that. But it does, I think this book introduced the fact that there are, even in the fact that reality in itself may be limiting, that there are realities out, there are alternatives to what this reality can hold. And so we can begin to sort of imagine or see differently the things that we have around us. We begin to see differently the resources that we have. To not necessarily think that like, oh, I only could use this for this reason, right? Or this can only be this. But that we begin to see the expansive opportunities in what we have and what is around us, and how we can engage with life, even within the constraints of what reality holds. Hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. And I really enjoyed that story for this reason. And the storytelling was beautiful because it really got to the different realities by kind of telling a story within a story, right? Like, so the illustration doesn't take up, like with the other books, like the illustration kind of took up the entire page, right? Because we were getting to the entire scene, right? But the scenes, they're like small scenes within each page for the most part, and that I felt was a good way to storytell the fact that there are multiple alternatives that can be held within a particular situation. And so, for one thing, right, and it kind of goes into, like, even just the despair of it all. Like, not even just in what, like, the opportunities, but just, like, the opportunities for what's, like, great and good and nutritious and fruitful, but also the opportunities that can be harmful and harmful and just, like, you know, negative or confusing, inconvenient, all of these things. But yeah, it talks about there are so many possible futures. There are so many possible things that you can do, right? It can be a future where you eat hot dogs every day, right? Once again, it can be just as ridiculous. It can be great and fruitful. It can be all of these different things. And so, like, once again, I love this story because it gets to that. And that is how my mind thinks. So I think, like, this was one of the books that I was like, I needed this story at this moment because, once again, it teaches, or it taught me. It didn't teach me. I shouldn't say that. It highlighted for me once again that this is, like, how my thought process genuinely is, where I'm, like, kind of sorting out very expansive information because I'm considering all of the ways that this can go. I'm considering all of the horrible things. I'm considering all of the great things, and it you know, that can feel like a very wide playing field. It can feel very overwhelming to try to sort through that kind of information, and let alone have a positive mindset about it. However, I think that there was something, once again, fundamental, like, children's books really kind of teach me the fundamentals every time of not necessarily just having, like, just a positive outlook, but having a playful outlook, being creative in your outlook, right? Like, being creative in the fact that, like, yeah, things can go a bunch of different ways, but I can also apply myself, or apply what I have creatively, to be able to create and enhance, encourage, affirm certain futures that may be more fruitful, maybe more loving, and maybe more dope to be a part of, you know? And so I really like this. I really love it because it felt playful. It felt very, like, you know, that. And so I think this is another book that I would have on my bookshelf. I would love to have conversations with this one too, and to really see actively how we can apply creatively, or think creatively, imagine creatively the different realities that our realities can hold. And it's gonna take work, and it's gonna take for you, once again, to apply actively your creativity in order to ensure that these realities exist for real. But, you know, that's the love of this, right? Like, that's the love of this, is that we can, in some ways, bring things back into our hands, bring things back into our communal hands, right? Working together to do that, to once again, give us futures that is more than what, you know, has been laid out for us in black and white. Because obviously there must be more than that. There must be more than that. There must be more than the black and white, hard ass circumstances that sometimes we may find ourselves in. There has got to be more than that, right? And so hopefully we begin to think about what that more is, what the expansiveness of those opportunities can be, and think and act creatively in order to really see if they can be popping or not. So yes, once again, There Must Be More Than That by Shinsuke Yoshitake. We'll write that in the chat. All right, our last one, or in the caption. Wow, I've been on Zoom way too much. The last one, Ruby's Bird Ruby's Bird. This is by Maya Thompson, illustrated by Claudia Dávila. I'm gonna take another drink of water. I gotta stay hydrated. It's getting warmer. Finally. Alright. So Ruby. Of course I picked this up because we have a black girl in the front. And I had to make sure. One thing that my local library doesn't do that I wish that it did, that the library in my college town did, was that they put stickers on the books that are written by African American authors or that censor African American black. Let me say black, because like what? That censor black authors or censor black characters. They mark those on there. And so it's easier for me to kind of like go in and like gear my reading towards to my black folks. But the local library doesn't do that. So like I'd actually have to sort and like move through it. And depending on how much time, I can definitely do that. It's no biggie. But I wish that they did that just for convenience and because like, you know, you service a lot of different people in your area. To speak on that again, you service a lot of different people in your area. And so it would be useful if people can, you know, find things that are relevant to them and or find stories that may be relevant to them. And this doesn't mean that like you have to just stick within that, but it could be a lot more convenient to find. So yes, we got Ruby's Bird. And I love the playfulness of the story. I've been wanting to go to New York a lot more lately, and I wonder if that's Twitter's influence. But this book centers the little child Ruby, who is a little restless, who's very restless in her apartment with her with her grandparents. And so her neighbor takes her out on a park date through Central Park and helps Ruby to identify one of the birds that are passing through at the time, because this particular bird is moving from one place to the next, and as it is the brink of spring, as spring is just beginning, this bird is passing through this particular region because of the fruit the fruit that it bears, because of the fruit that it bears from, like, you know, the trees and the things. Yeah, very simply. I'm trying to say it very simply, but without having to relay the specifics of what this means or what was said. But yeah, this bird passing through. And so Ruby, and who is taking her? I forget who takes her. Eva. Her neighbor Eva from downstairs takes her to the park to identify this bird. That once again, like I said, passes only mainly through the spring. And so Eva is trying to get a glimpse of this bird, but Ruby and her restlessness scares the bird away at first. But even still, Ruby's interest as she goes to the park again, and as what Eva taught her, is she able to identify the sight of this bird and the sound of this bird the next time she goes to the park. So I think that this story was really cool. I will say that I wrote it down here. The story progression felt a little sudden for what it was, but I think it was purposeful, because it was like, this is introductory. This is very introductory. So, and it starts off just talking about introductory in the sense that it starts to talk about, what does it talk about? It starts to talk about one of the birds, but it doesn't get through. It's like Ruby's birds, but we only talk about really one. No, actually, there's a few different birds in here, actually. Let me not be rude. There's a couple different birds in here actually. I think I didn't actually. Yeah, that was the case. I didn't pick up on it until the end, so that's on me. But there was like kind of a little bit of suddenness to the ending where it was like, okay, like she went back to the park, she saw the bird again. Great. Now that she's gonna go back and like think about it, like then the story ends. So like we don't necessarily get into like an expansive informational story about like, oh, I saw this bird, I saw this bird, I saw this bird. Like it kind of focuses on the one bird that is moving through, the warbler that is moving through at the time. But then like really beyond that it doesn't, aside from I think Ruby's pet. Let me see. Cockatoo, is this what this is? Is this the kind of bird this is? I'm gonna show the animation. I don't know why I'm being so stingy. Okay. Anyway, let me just show the animation. Ruby is very bright. A really nice scene setting. Very great animation. I don't want to call it simple, but like, you know, very like convenient, easy animation. Right? Where there's definitely a scene being set. There's a calmness to it. Feels pretty like, you know, pretty chill. And once again, there's like birds within it, but we don't necessarily, I think the story doesn't talk about the birds, so the story feels sudden. But the birds are involved. You have the mallard duck, which I just found this out earlier this year too, but the mallard ducks shed their wings at some point. I can't remember at which point of the season, but they shed their wings, their feathers, their feathers. They aren't able to fly in that period of time. But yeah, once again, you see the birds. And the scene, you got Ruby, you got Eva. They're looking at the birds. Very convenient, once again, animation. Nothing too spicy going on. The birds are drawn really well. Yeah, I love the premise of the book. Yeah, okay, yeah. I had to make sure I got all my notes. I love the premise of this book. And about like listening and going into like, you know, naturey areas. It's a love language of mine, seriously, to take a walk in the park, to take a walk on like grass or like a nature trail. We have a nature trail in the area that I love going to. Not so much in the summer because it can get pretty filled with bugs, but I love it in the fall, winter, and the spring. I love walking through there and just like I love the trees more than anything, but there are times where like, you know, you see the squirrels playing, you see the squirrels scurrying, you see like you hear the birds. There's like a falcon. There's a few falcons that like live in there, and sometimes you can see them flying really low through the trees. And that's terrifying. Not gonna lie, that's kind of terrifying. But it's funny it's fun to witness. I think it's really fun to witness. So I really like the premise of this book because I like listening to nature. I really do like to learn about. I've been very interested recently about learning about the animals and the plants, more so more like plant nature, but like also the animals, specifically the birds. And it's really funny because there was a time where I was like in this nature trail in Ann Arbor, and this lady comes up and she's like, "Do you hear this bird?" She was someone who worked with the conservatory group to make sure that endangered birds within a specific area could be left alone and that area wouldn't be used for zoning or used for, you know, construction, or, you know, that area couldn't be touched, so that the birds endangered in that area can have a chance to survive and procreate and, you know, live. And so she was there doing that work, or she was there listening specifically, but when she was talking to me about it, she was pointing out bird sounds to me. She was pointing out that sound was this kind of bird. And at the time, like, I didn't have any pen or paper, so I was like, okay, like, I hear you. And I was very interested in it. And she was like, download this app, you can do all of this, like, this is the group. And so pretty much since then, I've been kind of more attentive to birds themselves. I even have a friend that I joke with a lot about the bird economy, and I talk about how rich the bird economy is, because birds are always doing stuff. They are always they go get their food. They really are active creatures. They're active animals, and they really have a whole system, a whole way of communicating, a whole way of doing things. I mean, all animals, but the bird economy specifically is something that we joke about a lot, because it's something that is very present, especially when I can hear them in the morning, especially when I go outside and they are just flying from here to there, and we see a bluebird every so often, we see a red bird every so often. So yeah, Ruby's Birds is kind of like that introductory and informational kind of read, children's book, that is like, okay, like, start to pay attention to the birds in your area. See if you can go and find or listen to or hear or identify, recognize any birds that live within your area or within a local nature trail. You'd be surprised. I say this all the time in different kinds of videos, but this world is abundant and there are so many different species of birds. And when you start to really pay attention, you're like, wow, what kind of bird is that? Like, that one has black, white zigzags. There is a bird that has like this very particular pattern that I always see, and I'm just like, what kind of bird is that? And they fly away way too quickly, but you can always Google. YouTube is your friend too, especially when it comes to hearing bird noises and introducing yourself to the birds and the noises and the sounds that they make. Literally, YouTube is your friend in that, because there are so many videos. There are so many videos on there that highlight bird sounds. So many. So many. And so, yeah, Ruby gives you some tips at the end. Some binoculars. Get some binoculars, you know what I'm saying? And binoculars, you can find some pretty cheap at thrift stores. So I would suggest that. You don't necessarily have to go get a new pair off of like the interwebs. But yeah, she gives you some tips on how to be a better bird watcher, how to be a better like bird identifier for taking a nature walk. Genuinely, if you have the time, and I've been doing this with my family a little bit more, if you have the time, please, like, take walks with your family. Like, it's very, like, do that. And even if it's, like, you don't know about any birds, like, it can be even just fun, like, to point out, like, sounds that you hear and try to mimic them. So even if it's, like, you don't know what bird that is in that moment or what thing that is in that moment, you can kind of try to mimic that and see if you can go down a YouTube rabbit hole later and see if you can identify and find that specific bird. But within this book, too, gives you some common birds. And these are common birds to New York. But some of these we have in our own backyard. I definitely identify and know myself, right? Like, we have the American robin. I see the American robin all the time. Actually, the American robin rolled up on me earlier. The peregrine falcon, I see them often. I see them more. I remember seeing them a lot when I was in college. And I see them sometimes in the nature trails. We got the mallards. I see mallards quite often as well. Mourning doves I don't see, but interestingly enough, I just had a dream about mourning doves like last week. And more interestingly enough, is that I hear mourning doves. They have a very distinct eye-kuh sound, a very distinct sound. It's a very small book. It's very small pictures, but they have a very distinct cooing sound, and it can. When you look it up on YouTube, it was like the moment that I heard it on YouTube, I was like, I hear this bird all the time. I never see them though. And so like now I'm kind of on a lookout for them if I can ever see them. If I ever hear them, I'm gonna like run outside essentially. But yeah, we have a few different ones in here. Not all of them, these aren't all the ones that are native to the area that I'm in particularly, but there are websites too. I think if you look within like your local parks, there are actually organizations for this. Like there are actually like organizations dedicated to park conservation that helps for the balance. Specifically, they try to help for the balance of nature within cities, right? Like it's kind of obligated to. So like you have organizations or projects or a lab or a place of ornithology or something like that where they dedicate themselves to making sure, to knowing the animals that live in that area and to know what's going on in these parks or in these nature trails and they manage them, right? And so like if you look within like kind of like your local park or your local, I think it's like more so on the government website, right? I'll see if I can find it and post that there. But if you look within your local government park recreation page, they should highlight, and they will often highlight, the native birds to that area, sometimes the native plants. But if you wanted to look up plants, there's a lot of plant identifier apps on your phone. There's animal identifier apps on your phone too, but like I feel like with birds, they kind of fly away too quickly in order for me to do that. There's also, really want to shout out a young Black kid who's doing phenomenal work. I think the page name is like Ike's Bird Watching or Bird something. I'll post that too. And it's this young kid who really, I don't want to just call young kid, but there is this younger person, this visibly younger person. I know that, or not visibly younger person, younger than me, because he expressed his age, but who watches birds and posts about them, and it's so cute, so great. It's very interested and he's very inviting to that world. And so I think that the page name is Ike's Bird Watching or Bird something. But yeah, go out and listen and hear the birds and see like which birds live in your area. You'd be surprised how rich the bird economy is. Truly, you'd be surprised at how much is actually going on. Not even just like in the world of other humans, right? But in the world of non-human beings such as birds. And then I feel like that brings all of these stories kind of to all of the books that I read and talked about in this particular video to kind of like this cohesive point, because I think when it comes to the many possibilities, right, to our foundations of home, to our cultural traditions, to all of these things, right, and thinking creatively, right, it requires an attentiveness to the things that are around us, to the things as they change and they move and they adapt, for us to really be able to understand to understand our reality, one, and to also creatively apply and think about the reality at which we come from and that we're moving in, so we can see the many worlds of possibilities. And I brought that up with birds because when you pay attention and you're attentive to that, you see kind of what's happening within their animal behavior. You're like, wow, there's more to this life than just what it is that I am doing in this moment, and what is defined by the human experience, right? And so, yeah, another world of possibility, another world of opportunity, another world of seeing things a lot differently and from a different perspective. So yeah, with that, I'm going to go take my ass to the library and get some more books to talk about and to read. I'm really feeling teen novels this time, and maybe a little bit of children's books. Maybe I'll grab like 3 and then 2 or 3. Some short teen or preteen novel reads. Until next time, BB reads, BB and honey, all love.